Hey everybody, welcome to the SwigTech Leading Business Podcast. This is episode number 14. Today is October 26, 2020. I'm Eric.
And Shane.
All right, Shane, this will be a good one. Today's topic of discussion, which we'll get to, is going to be cloud voice. But before we get to that, we wanted to do our what we're using in tech segment again, and I figured I'd go first and talk a little bit about a piece of technology I'm sure many people know about, but one that I get really enthusiastic about some of these pieces of technology that we're using. And so the one I wanted to talk about today is Grammarly. Grammarly.com. It's Grammarly. I don't know how else to say it. Grammarly.com. It's a plugin / software as a service tool that can go into your Chrome add-ons. You can add it to Chrome. You can be integrated with Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Word, Google, Gmail, Google Sheets. Basically, wherever you're doing some sort of writing composition, as well as natively from their website. Also, it just checks your spelling and grammar for free. And then there's some paid options where you can do more with it, like check your tone and your consistency and things like that. But for me, I make a lot of errors, so I love seeing it catch them and fix them, and I have confidence that what I've written is going to go out error-free. And so in this fast-paced world, it's a tool that I really come to love.
I'm a big fan of Grammarly too. I use it all the time. To your point, the best places are probably in your Gmail or the browser add-in app, whatever you want to call it.
Extension. That's what it is, a Chrome extension. Yeah. I couldn't think
Chrome
of it.
Extension. There you go. And in Outlook, I use it a ton too. It's super helpful. The big question here, Eric, do you love it because you're so bad at this, you're never going to learn how to do grammar correctly and it will forever always help you? Or do you feel like Grammarly is helping you get better and you have fewer mistakes?
That's fun. It's a little bit of both. I have no intention of getting better, but there's a couple ahas along the way where I'm like, oh, good to know. There's some of those things that I've learned. This isn't as much as Grammarly is. I used to listen to a podcast called Grammar Girl. And for the longest time, I thought the saying or phrase, I thought it was like flush it out. It's flesh it out, flesh, not flush. And when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, what else have I been saying that's just been wrong and no one's corrected me? So that was a really fun one to learn.
I think there's a lot of those, with not you specifically, but just people in general using phrases poorly. Like a long time ago, I learned, and I might not even be right anymore. I may have mistaken myself here, but when you say anyway, when you're transitioning back, anyway, I want to go back to that. Yeah, you're not supposed to say anyways, plural. That's not a word.
Fascinating.
You're supposed to say anyway, singular. I mean, I guess it's not singular or plural, but without the S.
The S. Interesting. So I didn't know that one because I often would say and have said and do say. So anyways.
Yeah.
That's fun. So yeah, there's some things like that in Grammarly that I've learned along the way, or I've gotten really anal about using the proper versions of your, right? Apostrophe, RE without, those types of things.
Those things that you learned in third grade.
Yeah, it's all coming back to fruition now. Yeah, so that's a good one. And honestly, it's great for just general composition too. If I'm going to write something up, I'll start there because I'll know that I can, copy and paste it somewhere else. Their formatting tools are actually pretty easy too. You'd think they sponsor the show. They don't. I just am not happy about the product. So
cool. Yeah. What have I been using in tech lately? Big one for me is my current password manager, which is Bitwarden. Spelt like bit, B-I-T, and then warden of prison, I guess is how you'd say that. I don't really know why.
It's the game warden for the DNR, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably a better analogy. But anyway, Bitwarden has been awesome. It works really well across all platforms, right? So they have an iPhone app or whatever, Apple app, Android app. You can use it on Mac OS, PC, and then they also have browser extensions too for all the common browsers, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, etc. And all of that to be able to go across different platforms is free, which is a really nice piece. They do have like a pro or a paid version if you want to share stuff across multiple people and things like that. But I've noticed that all the other apps out there, LastPass, 1Password, Dashlane, there's like 7 or 8 that are really good. They all require a paid version to have like multiple different apps or to be able to access it on your phone and your computer or across multiple computers and stuff. So Bitwarden, super awesome because it doesn't charge you for that. And it also, I mean, don't quote me on this, I'm by no means a security expert or an engineer, but it offers all of the same like encryption, data safe at rest, all that sort of stuff that all the other password managers do. So
how do you use it on your cell phone? Like, what is that experience like if I have to log into Facebook or
there's
something?
actually, there's 2 really good ways to use it on your phone and or in the browser. And that's, I never really use the desktop app because every time I need a password on my computer, it's usually in the browser anyway. So I use the browser extension and the phone app. On the phone app, you can literally just like open up the app and browse your passwords or search for a specific password. And then you can view the username and password and any other notes and stuff that you have in there. Or you can like click an option to copy the username or the password, and then you can go to the other app and paste it. The better version or the better way that it works is you can set it up so that your phone or so that your Bitwarden app has the ability to autofill in other apps. I mean, that's a kind of like a security setting you have to change on your phone.
Very similar to like Chrome does for most people anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So then, let's say you're sitting in your Facebook app or your banking account app, you can click in like the username and password field, and it'll usually pop up with an option to like an autofill option to open Bitwarden, and it will pull it up right in the app. You pick the password that you want. Usually it will find it if it's smart enough to like see, oh, you're on facebook.com, so I'm going to show you all the passwords related to Facebook, and you can just click it and it'll autofill, and then you hit sign in. Or if it's not smart enough to autofill, you can just quick search right there and find it and autofill it.
Nice. That's pretty good. That's a good piece of technology. Sounds.
I mean, really, the biggest thing here is password managers are a must today, right? Like we talk about it all the time on here, and this is a Swick type podcast, so we can hint at it again, but multi-factor authentication and unique passwords are like your biggest line of defense for everything right now, right? Like if you have a really stupid, easy password, someone has probably already hacked your account. And if you don't have a good password and multi-factor authentication on, then you might accidentally fall for a phishing scam and give away your password. So it's important that you have multi-factor authentication on, and then also you should have like one password per each account, right? So you shouldn't be using the same password across different accounts, because then if one of your passwords does get compromised, now they have access to everything.
Makes sense, as we all know. Thanks, dude, for sharing that one. That's good. And I think you had something for the something Eric doesn't know.
Yes. So this is my favorite segment. This is the segment where I bring up some sort of technology or information question for you, and we'll see if you can answer it. I'm going out on a limb here. It's a little risky. It's related to our topic today, and I don't have that much knowledge in like traditional phone systems and stuff. So we'll see. Your answer, you probably won't have a great answer for this. I'll try and explain it. I don't know if my answer will be any better for folks. But we're going to try it because it's related to the phone topic. So what I want to ask you today is, do you know what SIP trunking is? And that's SIP, SIP.
Well, trunking. This is one of those grammar things because I've heard that term before, but I always thought it was zip, like ZIP trunking. And just based on the term trunking, I assume that there's some truncating going on where it's condensing something to package and repurpose, but I don't really know anything about it. But that's my, like, in context, what my guess would be.
Interesting answer. No, that's not right at all.
Right.
I don't know if the whole, like, if that's why they use the word trunking, if it's related to like truncating and stuff. Hard to say based on what it is. But so SIP stands for Session Initiation Protocol. And it's a term related to VoIP, or phone systems, voice over internet protocol for phone systems. And the concept here is the SIP trunking is essentially the virtual piece that tells which lines are what and how many like lines your phone system has, and okay, how do they make local calls, long distance calls, international calls, like all of that routing virtually is done as part of the SIP trunk.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it's on top, and we'll talk about what a PBX is later, but PBX is essentially like the phone system as a whole, whether it be analog or digital or voice over IP. And SIP trunking is kind of like on top of that. So it's like the phone system, and then SIP trunking is like telling what channels and lines are open and where the phone calls go.
It's crazy how much of this happens. That sounds so complex, but to the end user, you see or hear none of these things. It just works, usually.
You know what's even crazier about that? So yes, that is crazy. And the complexity of a phone system, like I said, I don't really even understand this. I probably just explained that wrong to you. But the complexity of a phone system is unreal when you consider, to your point, that everyone just like picks up a phone and makes a phone call and it just works, right? For the most part, it always has just worked. And then you consider like how old are phones, like the basic technology of landlines. That's not new. I have to look this up
Well, it's
now.
still, I mean, who was it? Albert Einstein that was quoted saying something like technology is magic. I'm trying to find it really fast here.
1849 was the first basic phone.
1849?
Yeah, I think the like telephony and telephones as we know it is like 1940s, 1950s. So we're talking 70 plus years ago is when people started using phones on like a normal basis, the way we know them today, to like call other people in their homes and whatnot, which that is insane. Like think about all the technology that's behind a phone system. Even if we're talking, let's say we're talking about an analog phone system, not any of the new stuff we're going to discuss today, like cloud and VoIP, but just a basic analog phone system where you've got all kinds of wires tying different lines together behind the scenes, right? Like behind the wall where your phone is mounted. And that somehow routes audio
There's some other
to some other person in some other place. Like that's a lot of technology. And to think that was created 70 years ago, that's unreal.
Yeah, and now we're doing it through video and recording the call, and we're in two separate places, and we're doing this on our computer, and it's,
that's like, I can't even understand that.
It's wild. And so the quote that I found it really quick, it's from a science fiction writer named Arthur C. Clarke. In his book Profiles of the Future: An Inquiry into the Limits of the Possible, he had a quote that said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And I would agree with that. Like at some point, this starts to just feel like magic, you know?
It does, especially to people like you and I and everyone else probably listening to this who don't really live and breathe that stuff. Some of our smarter folks on our team, our engineers and things like that, probably understand it a lot more than we do. But yeah,
they can show us how the tricks were done.
It certainly does seem like magic sometimes.
It's cool.
It's crazy to think about how much we take that for granted. Not just you and I, but people in general, like how upset we get when something doesn't work or your computer gets an update and
there's a comedian that did a skit on that. He said, I was flying on an airplane, and it was when Wi-Fi in airplanes was just released as a new thing you could do, and he's like, literally, they had just come over the intercom and said that you can browse Wi-Fi or whatever, and like a minute later they said it's broken, and the guy next to him goes, "Oh, you got to be kidding me." And he's like, "You're flying through the air in a chair right now. It's basically magic, and you're mad about something that hasn't even existed for 5 minutes yet not working."
Yeah. Not only are you flying through the air in a chair, you're flying through the air in a chair inside of like a giant metal tube.
Right.
Like that's not supposed to. That's not supposed to be working
You
either.
defied physics and you're mad that you can't browse the internet while you're doing that. So, the comedy in that is just our human nature and how we deal with things. I think it's comical. And to your point about, am I happy using Grammarly as someone that's never going to learn grammar, or am I going to learn some things from it? I remember using a map while driving and like reading off directions and saying, if you pass this, you've gone too far.
Oh my goodness. Do you remember MapQuest?
You printed them out before you go places, and people didn't
MapQuest,
trust the GPS, like from like
thinking
smartphones
now,
on the BlackBerry. They're like, no, I can't trust that technology. We have to print this off. I'm like, huh? No.
looking back on it now, it's like MapQuest is the worst, right? Like thinking about how easy it is now to just punch it into my phone or tell my phone where I'm going and have it bring it up, or on your GPS in your car.
Yeah.
Like it's so ridiculously convenient that we're to the point where we don't even need to know the steps of how to get somewhere.
People
We
will say,
just
you know how to get here? I'm like, well, how is that still a question you're asking me? It's going to be 2021. I don't know how to get there, but it doesn't matter. My
right?
GPS will tell me exactly where to go, step by step.
Yeah. And then you look back on MapQuest now and we think it's so ridiculous that we used it, but it's like at the time it was pretty impressive that you could like go to a website on a computer, type in 2 different locations, and it would spit out all the directions for you. Right? Like that was like the most convenient thing ever at the time.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Gosh, we're really deep into all this stuff. Let's get into our topic. We
All
can go
right.
on. Well, this could be a whole podcast episode of us rambling on about the modern technologies that we take for granted. It could be a whole episode.
It
Food
will
for
be, I'm sure.
yeah.
Episode 15.
So our topic today really is cloud voice, and we wanted to just take a brief stop at like what is voice over IP, and kind of just understand that first, and then get into cloud voice and what that's like, and what reasons are good to make a switch if you were to be considering one, and what solutions exist out there. And this is all kind of under the context that we're going to be doing a webinar, a brain food webinar on this topic also in the near future. So it seemed like a good topic to spend some time on. That being said, like VoIP stands for, because I had to kind of figure this out for myself because I don't know, voice over internet protocol. And from what I could find, put simply, it refers to making phone calls that are made through the internet rather than through a regular landline or like a mobile network. And so it works. This is what I had found out. So these are some of my notes here. It works by taking your analog voice signals, converting them into digital signals, which you kind of talked about a minute ago. Is that the truncating, right, or something?
Yeah, the SIP trunking is done on like the digital side.
Okay, and then sending them as data over your broadband line. So again, a lot happening kind of behind the scenes, but for starters, once it's set up, it's typically cheaper than like a traditional phone line, and it means that depending on your setup, you may not have to pay for your phone calls based on the distance, which country you're calling, or how much time you spend like literally on the phones. So
yeah, so essentially the reason that that's all true is because you're using an existing framework, right? Everyone uses and has internet service, or like today, right? If you're standing up a new building or something, or a new house or whatever, it makes more sense to use just internet technology to do both your normal web browsing, what have you, what you need internet for, and your phone calls, right? Because traditionally, the analog system that you kind of alluded to, or the traditional phone system, was a whole separate network of very similar lines and cables. So that's what makes what makes VoIP more attractive, right? You already have internet, you're using internet. The very basic like analog voice calls that you're making, right? Having voice travel over internet lines or traditional phone lines isn't like a very robust or like high need technology, I guess.
reliable.
Yeah, I think it's reliable. Both flavors, right? Like when was the last time you had a landline? I mean, not that we really use landlines anymore, but think about like as a kid, right? When you were on the phone on a landline, did you ever really have dropped calls and stuff?
No, right. But I do remember there I remember growing up having like landlines, obviously, and corded phones, even and cordless phones, and all that stuff, the kind of progression of all that. But like if the power went out, the phone could still work. If it was like a really basic model phone that just plugged into the landline and not like needing
Mhm.
power for like a cordless phone or wireless phone or whatever it was called then. So I think
Right.
that's kind of interesting to know that maybe there's some like emergency use case to have one. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the same as internet service though today too, right? If your power goes down, usually your average person will lose internet service because your internet is coming into a modem, which is just
yeah,
plugged into power, and then a router for your wireless also plugged into power. But if you had like a battery backup, for an example, to keep those items running, then I think you would still have internet service.
good point. Good to know.
So yeah, so anyway, the traditional phone lines and your internet service in your house are very similar technologies. Obviously, like we kind of alluded to, one's analog, one's digital, so there's some conversion going on there. But the reason VoIP kind of started becoming such a hot item is because there was no reason not to use the internet service
Sure.
for your
And
phone.
then so like having hardware around that, like, hard phones and things like that seem to still be something that was like a requirement for that type of setup, a VoIP system. Um, and this is
Yeah,
where it gets a little grayer as we go from VoIP to cloud,
it
trying to
does, and this
those.
gets really gray, right? So, and we'll talk about some of that as we shift to cloud. But yeah, it's interesting. So let's say you had a traditional phone and internet service separate. You would normally have a physical handset or phone on your desk with a phone cord running into it. And then next to that, you have your computer, your laptop, or your desktop with an Ethernet cable running into the computer. So then we went to VoIP where they're both running on the same service. So now what was really cool about that is you needed less infrastructure because the same cord for your phone and your computer. So most VoIP phones will have two Ethernet ports on them.
Mhm.
You plug the one coming from your wall into your phone, and then you plug another one from your phone into your computer to get internet all the way to your computer. Um,
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So I do have some like recollection of this kind of taking place. Okay, but I had
yeah,
no clue as to why. I was like, oh, whatever.
right. So now we shift into these cloud items that we'll talk about, and it gets kind of gray, right? Because you can still have like a VoIP phone system that has some cloud aspects and stuff, where you still have like the physical handset, but then your computer maybe also has like a digital call log. There's kind of those start to blend together a little bit. But as we shift all the way to cloud, you're basically deleting that physical phone that you used to have at your desk, right? So now you only need your computer to make phone calls. That's
which
like
is
the big differentiator.
which is cool. And there's probably a very large laundry list of like, things a business may need or ought to be considering if you're going to make that switch. But some of them that I have noted are probably a little bit more for the small to medium sized business rather than the enterprise. That being said, some things a business may need is a phone solution that's designed for small and medium sized business, right? If you're not an enterprise organization, what do you need? You know what I mean? Like you don't have all of these various different departments and locations strewn across the globe or the
Yeah, and
country.
I think
Uh,
that that's a really good point. And it's important to like pay attention to that piece, like the need, so called, like how robust does your phone system need to be. But the interesting thing about that is that's also kind of starting to melt away as small and medium businesses start to try and act and feel and be like enterprise businesses, right? So oftentimes you call a business, even if it's a small business, they're going to have like an auto attendant, right? Where a robotic voice, for lack of a better term, or digital voice, or some sort of like AI personality will answer the phone and walk you through how to get to an actual person or how to call their help desk or their call center. And then they're oftentimes also going to have like call queues and stuff set up for if you call a sales line, it's going to ring the three sales guys, stuff like that. So it's important to have a system that's designed for your needs. but it's also worth calling out, like, a lot of them do all of the bells and whistles features that maybe not everyone thinks they need, but nowadays a lot of businesses have anyway.
Sure, which is kind of cool. I mean, it seems like there's this meeting in the middle that's kind of happening where large corporate, enterprise businesses are considering this, and obviously down market is you're maybe a startup or a smaller business, you're getting kind of like you said, the offering that these bigger companies maybe used to have only access to, and now it's kind of everybody can use this,
Yeah.
and you're getting the same kind of suite of tools, but you can now just turn them on or turn them off, kind of thing as you need it. So some other things that I had noted were, some things a business may need, like freedom from a phone at your desk. If you don't need that phone at your desk, this is something to consider. Maybe you want to save money on the hardware and the management of the hardware. There's a lot of capex that goes into buying all of this physical equipment that you'd have to park at everyone's desks that may or may not need them. So those are, I don't know, some things I don't have to like go through all of them, but like the scalability of this stuff too can be pretty rapidly and easily scalable if you
I
need
mean,
to
that's the
scale.
best part, right? Right there is the fact that no longer do I need a physical building and then have to have someone come in and run cabling and stuff just for me to get a phone line set up in my office. No, you can now go to Google Voice or Microsoft Teams, or we'll talk about some other options here. And overnight, you can stand up a new business line and have people calling it, right? So you can be a startup and your phone system makes it seem like you're a full running business, even though maybe you filed to start an LLC yesterday and turned on a phone line today just by punching in a credit card number,
Yep. Yeah, it's very interesting to think about it that way. Like you can just go. There's a lot of speed in this stuff where you can just get going, and at some point there can be some layers and levels of complexity that would require somebody to really kind of step in and help. If you have like a paging system in a warehouse, and there could be more going on here. Like you mentioned, like a hunt group for like customer service, or like directing it and routing it to a very specific user base, like sales folks. But a lot of that stuff, it doesn't seem like it's that terribly difficult to do with this type of solution. Um, I'm looking at some other notes here, and I'm just gonna. It looks like some of them are just kind of repurposed the same statements. Like it's keeping all size businesses in mind. If you're considering that type of move, um, you don't really have to sacrifice on any features or flexibility. It's. I mean, there's like more reasons to go with this than to not.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think to your point there, Eric, about the need to maybe have someone help you along the way if you do have a warehouse and a paging system and stuff. I think that's a great point, and it's really important to call out, like, yeah, some of this cost is now shifting from a lot of the upfront hardware and cabling and setup and creation of like the physical environment for a phone system, and it's shifting into having an IT staff on hand that know the phone system, or outsourcing to whether that be someone like SwickTech or another phone provider that can really help you build the solution that meets your needs. So
yeah.
it's not to say like go cloud voice because it's actually like free and all you have to do is pay for the monthly cost. No, there's still absolutely some like setup and configuration that's needed
Licensing
if
and
you
things like
have
that.
if you want to have a robust phone system. So it's good to know, like, that's kind of the new trade-off, right? And that's common of a lot of technologies these days, right? You'll see the shift from a physical server in a building to cloud servers. Well, now that means you're paying a pretty big monthly cost instead of that upfront capital expenditure to have Microsoft or Google or Amazon run your server environment. And there's also going to be some labor costs involved in that, right? Now, not only do you have to worry about the physical server and if it's up and running, but you got to make sure that your entire virtual environment hosted by someone else is optimized for your needs and serving up the
Sure.
data and the technology that you need to run your business. So the costs are just shifting, they're not going away.
That makes sense. That's a good point to make. But the whole like not needing capex is attractive. The fact that I can use this on my Android or iOS device is pretty awesome. I've been in the car and made calls out to people through our Teams Voice solution using my Teams Voice account and app. That's been really great, to quickly recap or catch up on things or touch base. without having to use my cell phone to do that. I'm using the business phone or take calls, right? On the go. So that being said, that the transition here really would come into like what solutions are out there. We're just scratching the surface on this whole thing. We could obviously go in great depth in any one of these components, but just kind of staying service level, we have a few listed that are kind of the leaders in the space, if you will.
Yeah, and to that point, there's all kinds of them, and I know that a lot of not like traditional phone services, but your common like internet service providers, right? AT&T, they do phones too. They offer like a version of some of these solutions. All the other ISPs and communication companies will offer types of these solutions now. So it's important to go with the one that kind of fits your needs the best. But the really common ones out there that you're going to see that are kind of the back end or the environment that you're using are Microsoft Teams, right? So we know we touch on that one a lot, and folks will hear that all the time. We're doing a webinar on it again in a few weeks on why using Teams Voice. But Microsoft Teams is a really hot one right now. Google Voice, or I think they call it like Workspace now, if it's like a business phone plan, is another big one. And then a couple of the major like companies that started in like the digital phone. I mentioned earlier there was a time, and I think you can still get these types of solutions, where you had like a VoIP phone system. So you still had your internet lines running your phone service to like a handset, like an actual phone on your desk. And that was your entire phone, but then you had like a digital app that was running on your computer. So you could see when someone was calling, it would pop up on your computer screen too. You could see your call logs, access your voicemail on the computer. Those types of companies, 8x8 and Ring Central, I think are a couple of common ones of those. They are now starting to offer a full cloud voice solution as well.
Yeah, and it looks, if that's all you need, they seem like good solutions. I would say, obviously, you mentioned like we tout Teams. If we like Teams because it's integrated on the Microsoft stack, so there's so much more to it than just voice, that all these other things start to get kind of baked into it, which
don't give away our entire webinar topic here.
It's just very affordable. The licensing makes a lot of sense because it could tie it into all this other stuff that you're already doing. But if you're not doing any of those things and you're not on the Microsoft stack and you have no like compelling reason to go down that path, it might actually be a deterrent. You would really want to probably not go with them if you're
it might be overly expensive then for that sort of scenario.
So then these other ones are really great to consider for, again, depending on your use case, your kind of growth trajectory, where you think you're going to be going, and what types of tools are going to help your business. So there's a number of good offerings out there that can fit for each business's unique needs, without going into detail about all of them, right? But there's cost to each of them. If you're in the Microsoft stack, then Teams is like hard. It really is hard to beat, I think.
Yeah, and I think to your, we kind of touched on price a little bit, how it's shifting more to the monthly costs and maybe some labor for having some IT folks that can run it. I think the real, let's say it's a wash as an example, or even let's say cloud voice is more expensive for your business today than it would be to go with a traditional phone system. I would say the real like benefit, the huge benefit that you get from switching to a voice system, and you alluded to this a little bit, Eric, is the flexibility. So not only now do you not need the hardware, you still can, like a lot of them offer a hardware solution where you can have a handset, or we have headsets for Teams Voice, but you don't need that anymore. So you get out of having to have that hardware, and then the flexibility is that you have your phone is on your computer now, right? So if you have a laptop computer, anywhere you take your laptop, you have your phone system. And then on top of that, most, if not all of these cloud voice solutions are also going to offer an app for your phone. So now your phone doubles your smartphone.
Your business phone. Yeah.
Oftentimes is going to be an employee's personal cell phone. You don't have to have that employee use their personal cell phone number anymore. They can just download the Teams app or the Google Voice or the Ring Central app right on their phone, and they have basically two phones in one now. So it gets rid of the other weird problem that a lot of businesses have, where they have to like buy a sales employee a separate smartphone, right? So they have a business line when they're out and about. And really in today's world, when we're talking about remote employees, that's everyone now, right? We're both sitting at home right now. So many businesses have sent all of their employees home for the foreseeable future because of the pandemic and everything that's going on. And so this flexibility is just crazy convenient. It's unbelievable. Like you said, you can make a call from your car now. I can just pick up my smartphone and answer a work call or make a work phone call, and it looks like it's coming from my office line. It
You
is
do a
just
video conference call too. It's like so much more. It's just we've come a long way, and I think honestly, in light of like the pandemic, it's pushed a lot of people over this edge that they saw on the horizon, but there was no real rush to get there. And now it's almost kind of been a bit more mandatory. Now that we're in this kind of place, it's kind of like, oh, this isn't so painful or bad. This is actually pretty great, and everyone's finding ways to appreciate with all of this stuff, so it balances out somewhere. But these tools that we're talking about, this cloud voice solutions, it honestly is a bit of a game changer. If you're able to make that switch, or if you have already, you're probably realizing it. So it's fun to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, to that point, like just look at who's doing well in business right now, right? And it's all the technology companies, Zoom and Microsoft and Amazon and whatnot, that are all offering these types of flexible solutions so that businesses can still get stuff done during a time like this. So It's really cool to see that coming to fruition. I don't necessarily love that the people who have trillions of dollars are getting richer and richer. That's a different conversation for a different day.
Oh yes, that is it. I'm not going to go down that path at all. But I think that'll pretty much wrap it up for today. And as we had mentioned, we are hosting another Brain Food webinar. It's going to be November 18th at 2 p.m. It's titled "Your Next Move with Microsoft Teams." Hint, hint. Replacing your phone system with voice and video calls. So we'll go a bit deeper on the webinar for those that found this episode fun and interesting and want to learn more. I would say definitely register for that by going to swicktech.com. I think you hover the resources tab, you can click on events and see what we have going on. So pretty straightforward stuff.